In our headlines on this Wednesday, January 22nd, here in South Korea, anti-corruption investigators earlier today made a third attempt to take in President Yoon Suk-yeol to their headquarters at the government complex in Gwacheon for questioning and are now considering conducting their questioning sessions at the Seoul Detention Center. Meanwhile, the number of newborns in November last year totaled over 20,000, up more than 14% on year. And pundits are keeping their fingers crossed for a tangible rebound in annual births in 2024 for the first time in almost a decade. Over in the U.S. on Tuesday, President Donald Trump announces the creation of a new company by 3 top tech firms to build an artificial intelligence infrastructure within American borders with an investment of up to $500 billion. We start at the Seoul Detention Center, where President Yoon Suk-yeol continues to refuse to partake in questioning sessions led by anti-corruption investigators. For details, I have Arirang's Lee Soo-jin standing by live. Soo-jin, welcome. So in light of the president's refusal to meet with investigators, I understand a third attempt was made to take him in. Do tell us more.
Sure, so as it was announced in a briefing early this morning, the CIO has moved forward with another forced summons today. And just like you mentioned, this was a third such attempt. And the CIO announced just 2 hours ago that this third attempt was also unsuccessful. A CIO vehicle was seen moving through the main gates of the Seoul Detention Center at 10:20 a.m. today. And the CIO had considered several options, actually. One was forcibly transferring Yoon to the CIO interrogation room at the government complex in Gwacheon, and the other was carrying out on-site interviews in an investigation room at the detention center. But Yoon refused to comply with either as he continued to sit in consultations with his lawyers. This third attempt follows the first attempt that took place on Monday, followed by the second just yesterday, when the CIO had dispatched 6 investigators and prosecutors to the Seoul Detention Center at around 5 p.m. after the agency confirmed that the impeachment trial hearing had been concluded. But as Yoon did not immediately return to the facility but instead stopped by a military hospital for a medical checkup, the CIO officials were left to wait at the detention center. The officials were eventually forced to leave around 30 minutes after Yoon arrived at the detention center after 9 p.m. as regulations prohibit questioning detainees without their consent after 9 p.m. The agency is continuously making these efforts as there isn't much time before the CIO has to hand Yoon's case over to prosecutors before the detention period expires on the 28th.
Right, the 28th of January. Separately, Soo-jin, I understand anti-corruption officials launched a search and seize operation today targeting the presidential headquarters and residence.
Right, so the CIO began a search and seizure operation at both the president's residence and the presidential office, which are both also located at the Yongsan-gu district in central Seoul. And the CIO is aiming to secure encrypted phone records, meeting minutes, as well as computers. And this is because Yoon is currently facing allegations of using an encrypted phone to order top police and military officials to command troops to remove lawmakers from the National Assembly during his brief imposition of martial law. This move is seen as part of the CIO's attempt to secure additional evidence amid the difficulties faced when trying to conduct in-person interviews with Yoon. Yoon's lawyers have steadfastly maintained their stance of refusing to comply with the CIO investigation, saying that as they plan to attend all the impeachment hearings at the Constitutional Court, they need time to prepare. The search and seizure operations are expected to face challenges, namely from the Presidential Security Service, which has blocked the previous attempts.
Right, Soo-jin, what has been the response to the events thus far from the public gathered there outside the detention center? I mean, we can't see them, but we can for sure hear them loud and clear.
Right, so I've actually been here since the morning, and even then I could see people holding posters in support of him, and you can also definitely hear them through as the voices are amplified through loudspeakers. And we were actually forced to move locations right before this newscast because the sound had gotten so loud. And one of the main things you can hear is them chanting President Yoon's name, as well as you can hear in the background probably them singing. And there weren't that many people gathered in this morning or even early afternoon, but now you can could definitely see, like you said, and hear that there are more people have arrived. And along with a growing number of people on site, I've also noticed more police as part of precautions to prevent another incident like the storming of the Seoul Western District Court by youth supporters on Sunday. There are also numerous 119 emergency trucks that have been dispatched. And that's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Sujin, thank you for the latest coverage. That was our Sujin reporting live on the latest with regard to the investigation into the president. The U.S. continues to aim for AI dominance under its new administration. In fact, President Donald Trump on Tuesday announced a partnership among 3 private firms that will see the investment of billions of U.S. dollars into the AI arena within national borders. Our Park Gonu reports.
Thank you.
Efforts to save America are being put into action. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday the largest AI infrastructure project in history with investment of up to $500 billion US dollars. The massive project includes 3 companies, OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle, that have decided to partner on a new AI infrastructure company, Stargate.
Beginning immediately, Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI, and this will include the construction of colossal data centers, very, very massive structures.
The first data center project is already under construction in Texas. Also on Tuesday, a mass deportation operation began in the U.S., according to Border Czar Tom Homan. He said the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency will primarily crack down on illegal immigrants with criminal records, but added those without such records will also be arrested if found. Homan said sanctuary cities and protected areas, including schools and places of worship, will not be exempt from arrests. Trump also hinted at a tax war with a memorandum after taking office, which threatened to double tax rate for foreign nationals and companies in the U.S. in response to discriminatory taxation on U.S. multinationals by other countries. He also mentioned potentially withdrawing from the OECD Global Tax Pact that allows other countries to levy top-up taxes on U.S. companies. Trump also spoke about imposing tariffs.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada, I think February 1st.
Canada's Prime Minister said it'll respond robustly if unfair tariffs are imposed to protect the country's interests. Trump also spoke about possible tariffs on China early next month. However, investment banks Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs echoed opinion in Wall Street that Trump's recent comments on tariffs were quite moderate, but also noted related uncertainties remain in the coming days. With easing concerns, the New York stock market, including the Dow Jones 30, closed strongly on Tuesday, up by more than 1.2% from the previous session. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
Quite a number of young Korean scholars have chosen to further broaden their academic horizons by seeking studies in the U.S. So how does Mr. Trump's return to the White House look to affect their plans? Our Iuni takes a look.
Now that Donald Trump is back in office, what does his second term mean for South Korean students in the U.S.? Is it an emerging challenge or possibly a new opportunity? The latest data shows that there are over 45,000 Korean students in the U.S., ranking 3rd in terms of the largest international student populations following China and India. Given Trump's first term, America First immigration policies, which focused on stricter visa rules and limiting post-graduation work opportunities, there are concerns about the impact on Korean students. However, there may also be areas of focus that could open new pathways for international students in fields like technology, engineering, and research. A STEM visa is commonly used to refer to visa options available for those pursuing degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, including the F1 student visa with additional work opportunities. A recent graduate from grad school in data science in 2024 and currently working in the United States, Kim Gyu-hyun, gives us more details.
It's a policy that benefits the United States mostly. Of course, individuals working in the United States can also benefit, but it's a policy to retain talent in the country. So I don't think it'll be the best interest of anyone to cancel or revoke the STEM OPT or H-1B policy. But I do think that it might be less friendlier than before, in that it'll be more selective of who gets the STEM visa.
In June 2024, while running for president, Donald Trump proposed to offer green cards to international students who graduate from American schools. This could be a potential game changer for those looking to build their futures in the United States. But with over 1 million international students in the US, questions remain.
He claimed it would be implemented right after taking office, but many experts are skeptical about its feasibility due to the scale of the proposal. There are doubts about whether Trump and his current team can actually make it happen.
The professor also added that although Korean students in the United States may not be directly affected for now, under the Trump administration, it's likely that the overall environment in American society could become more unwelcoming for international students.
Visa policies and restrictions could add an extra layer of complexity for international students like me, but I see these challenges as an opportunity to refine my strategies and explore alternative pathways.
While the direct impact on international students may not be immediate, the shifting atmosphere in American society could present new challenges, making it important to stay adaptable and prepared for any changes ahead. 이은희, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, speculation is mounting about prospects of fresh engagement between US President Donald Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And for more on such prospects, our Oh Soo-young sat down with a former US envoy to the six-party nuclear talks. Do take a listen.
Seoul and Washington could aim for small but meaningful steps towards denuclearizing North Korea in a possible small deal under the new Trump administration. Former US intelligence official Joseph Tetrani told Arirang News he sees potential for a revival of top-level talks between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un after the Hanoi summit in 2019 broke down, which showed that Kim was not ready for a big deal to close down all his nuclear facilities. Ambassador Tetrani was Washington's special envoy to the six-party talks that aimed to negotiate with North Korea 2 decades ago.
In regards to what sort of a process could be used to better engage with North Korea, well, I think we learned from Hanoi that the Libya model, where we expect North Korea to put everything on the table, is unrealistic. It's not going to happen. And I think we knew this from the six-party talks with North Korea going back to 2005 with the joint statement. It's actions for actions. As North Korea gets certain benefits, they will start to dismantle their nuclear weapons programs.
Despite Kim Jong-un's reported disappointment and anger over the failed talks, Tetrani said the potential lifting of economic sanctions for smaller concessions could draw him back to negotiations.
This hasn't been put on the table before, but ideally stop the production of fissile material for nuclear weapons. I mean, these are all moves in the right direction. Now, is North Korea going to give up their arsenal of nuclear weapons? No. And Kim Jong-un has made that very clear. But our goal should be, and I think will be, the complete verifiable dismantlement of all nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons facilities. And that should continue to be our goal.
Tetrani stressed the importance of reaching even small deals to freeze North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile development, especially as the regime last year forged a comprehensive strategic partnership with Russia, which includes mutual defense in times of war, and experts fear a potential transfer of key missile and nuclear technologies.
The assessment, at least in the United States, is reportedly that they can miniaturize their nuclear warheads, and they could mate them to these short-range, intermediate-range, long-range ballistic missiles. What they could be getting from Russia is more work on their hypersonics, because the hypersonic, that's where they're working on that, is capable of defeating, in theory, missile defense systems, which is very, very important, but also MIRVing them, where they have multiple reentry vehicles, where they have multiple reentry, if you will, nuclear warheads, where you can have one missile, an ICBM, like the Hwasong 19, carrying 5 to 6 nuclear warheads that could be independently maneuvered to strike different targets.
While the South Korean president's suspension from office has hindered top-level diplomacy with Washington, Detrani says the bilateral alliance will likely remain robust due to such challenges, among other security issues in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly as Washington continues to counter China's growing influence. The ambassador added it is highly unlikely the US would formally recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, as that could potentially trigger distrust among US allies and an arms race in the region. Usyang, Arirang News.
Over in Geneva, a fresh war of words between the two Koreas took place at the latest UN Forum on Arms Control, with South Korea underscoring North Korea's blatant defiance of UN Security Council resolutions and the regime finding fault with the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The UN Conference on Disarmament was held on Tuesday in Geneva, Switzerland, with much of the attention on North Korea. At the meeting, North Korean ambassador to the UN office in Geneva, Cho Chol-soo, slammed the U.S. for conducting aerial intelligence activities against the regime since the beginning of the year. He further criticized the simulated nuclear war exercises being conducted on the Korean Peninsula and U.S.'s strategic bombers being deployed to the region. Cho said that U.S. political and military provocations are what's causing armed conflicts and undermining regional stability. He further stressed that a strong national defense force is the only way to protect peace and vowed to deter all military provocations by hostile forces. The envoy concluded his remarks by saying that as a responsible nuclear state, the North will continue its efforts to prevent all forms of war and protect peace and stability. In response, Kim Il-hoon, counselor at South Korea's permanent mission to Geneva, pointed out that North Korea not only provides Russia with a large quantity of lethal weapons and ballistic missiles, a violation of UN Security Council resolutions, but also dispatched more than 11,000 troops. Kim pointed out the recent capture of 2 North Korean soldiers as evidence of North Korea's participation in the Ukraine war. He also stressed that North Korea lowering its threshold for a nuclear attack is a present-day threat, adding that it goes against peace and stability in the region. However, Kim still emphasized the importance of holding talks, saying that the only way North Korea can benefit is through dialogue and diplomacy. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Findings for the month of November show a substantial surge in the number of newborns, posting the highest growth in 14 years. Our Chae Min-jung covers the latest data.
Last November saw the country's biggest rise in births in 14 years. According to Statistics Korea, the number of births in November last year was at just over 20,000, up 2,500 births, or 14.6% from a year earlier. This is the highest growth rate since November 2010, when it reached over 17% growth. The number of births has exceeded 20,000 for 5 consecutive months after surpassing that mark in July. And increases were witnessed for November in every province and administrative division of the country. If the current trend continues until December, the annual number of births is expected to see a positive rebound for the first time in 9 years.
The increase in the number of births seems to be influenced by a prior increase in marriages. The rise in marriages between August 2022 and the first quarter of 2023 might have contributed to the subsequent rise in births.
In November, there were over 18,500 marriages, marking the highest number in 9 years and an increase of 11%. During the same month, there were more than 29,000 deaths, resulting in a decline in the natural population of 9,000. Chae Min-jung, Arirang News.
In other news, Daemyeong Sono Group Sono International will bolster its participation in management of T-Way Air. Now, following a request from the group earlier this week demanding an overhaul of management and a capital increase for stable operations of the airline, Sono International also requested access to the shareholder registry. The request included concerns over insufficient maintenance costs and personnel, as well as the lack of reliability in terms of aviation safety. The Webtoon industry has been noting tangible advances for the 6th year in a row, and keeping that in mind, we explore the efforts underway to ensure greater growth. As usual, our An Sung-jin was out and about.
25-year-old Chun Sung-yeon aspires to be a famous webtoon artist, not just in Korea, but around the world.
Not only did I start drawing webtoons because I like them, but, and this may be deep, I like how I can express philosophical or deep storylines. It's not just fun comics like the old days, but it can be something more meaningful than that.
He's taking a leave of absence from his other studies to devote himself to webtoons, and he's not the only one.
In 2024, compared to the year before, registered students increased by 25%. One thing we emphasize is real experience. We have signed MOUs with various webtoon studios, so students could immediately gain hands-on experience as well.
The hardest step for emerging artists is probably making their debut on a major webtoon platform. But luckily, there are talent spotters like Flory who search out stories that connect with readers.
My job entails everything related to these webtoon creators, from finding and contacting them to producing and marketing their content. And it is important that we continue to work on discovering and showcasing new artists.
According to the Culture Ministry and Korea Creative Content Agency, South Korea's webtoon industry saw an operating profit of more than 2 trillion won, or $1.4 billion in 2023, up by nearly 20% from the year before. South Korea's webtoon industry continues to see a steady influx of learners. Who knows, maybe this time next year, students like Chun Sung-yeon will be making his debut on a webtoon platform. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Turkiye, a fire at a ski resort hotel in the northwestern province of Bolu has killed at least 76 people and injured 51 others. The fire at the Turkiye ski resort reportedly started early on Tuesday, local time, on the restaurant floor of the 12-story hotel, which had 238 guests at the time. Emergency response teams were delayed due to the hotel's remote location and adverse weather conditions. The fire was eventually put out after approximately 10 hours. An investigation is underway to figure out the exact cause of the fire, and police have detained 9 people, including the hotel's owner. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has declared Wednesday a day of mourning and vowed that those responsible will be held accountable for the tragedy. In Israel, the Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, General Herzi Halevi, submitted a letter of resignation on Tuesday, acknowledging his responsibility for the shortcomings during the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks. In his resignation letter, the military chief said the IDF had failed in its mission to protect the citizens of Israel. The October 7th attacks resulted in the deaths of approximately 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, and the abduction of some 250 individuals. It is being described as one of the most significant security failures in Israel's history. Halevi's resignation is set to take effect on March 6th. General Yaron Finkelman, head of the IDF Southern Command, also stepped down, citing similar reasons. In the U.S., the southern region was hit by a rare snowstorm on Tuesday. Heavy snowfall and icy conditions were seen in cities including Houston and New Orleans, with New Orleans expecting snowfall potentially matching a record set back in 1895. The rare weather conditions led to disruptions in air travel as well, with over 2,000 flight cancellations and 10,000 delays. Operations were also suspended at Houston's major airports. In response to the storm, several Gulf Coast states declared states of emergency, recommending residents to stay indoors and avoid travel. In London, the 71st annual Toy Fair is underway at the Olympia Exhibition Hall. The fair runs until January 23rd and showcases toys from over 250 exhibitors, including Spin Master, the Lego Group, and Gibson's. This year's exhibition includes themes such as the booming kidult category, catering to adults who collect or play with toys. The kidult market accounted for 25% of UK toy sales in 2024. The fair also highlighted an increase in affordable pocket money toys, which accounted for nearly 30% of UK toy sales last year. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
There's ultrafine dust over the capital for a third day in a row. The sky's covered with gray dust as if it was trapped in a gray curtain. Here in Seoul, ultrafine dust advisories have been issued with red levels of ultrafine dust. As more fine dust from overseas gradually flows in, the air quality is expected to worsen. Preliminary measures to reduce the high concentration of fine dust were expanded to other central and western parts of the country, including Gwangju and Jeollabuk-do province. It is highly likely that fine dust will continue until the weekend in these milder weather conditions. Tomorrow morning, Seoul and Gyeongju will start off at -2 degrees Celsius, Busan at 4 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 7 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gwangju and Daegu, 12 degrees. It is expected to rain or snow between Friday night and Saturday on the East Coast. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors, grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
Hi, Chef Ryan here. Today we're going to make hwangtae-tang, a dried pollock soup perfect for cold, wintry weather. Wow.
고무장갑 다 똑같다고? 아니, 러버랩은 달라. 내 손인 듯 하루 종일 편하게. 슬림한 두께로 낀 듯 안 낀 듯 가볍게. 튼튼하니까 걱정 없이. 두 가지 길이로 다양하게 쓰는 러버랩으로 만드는 편리한 일상. 껴보면 달라. 러버랩 고무장갑. 러버랩.
Korea is exploring its options of better addressing universal tariffs that the new Trump administration earlier pledged on all U.S. imports. On Press Perspective today, we touch upon trade amid Trump tariffs. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective. It's Wednesday, January 22nd here in Seoul, and I'm Min San-hee. Speaking to members of the media gathered at the Oval Office Monday night as he signed a series of executive initiatives, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed a 25% tariff will go into effect on all Canadian and Mexican imports into the U.S. starting February 1st. So what does this mean for the rest of his trade partners, including South Korea? To answer that question, I have Andres Sanchez-Brown with Spanish news agency EFE Spain here in the studio. Andres, welcome back.
Hello, Sonia. Thank you so much for having us here, as always.
I also have Professor Song Soo-young of Business at Chungang University. Joining this talk virtually, Professor Song, as always, it's a pleasure.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon to both of you.
Yeah. Right, Professor Song. Andres, we'll start here in the studio. Let's begin with the Finance Ministry's biggest ever export finance support.
Yes, the Korean Finance Ministry actually approved of a record financial support for the export sector of around 360 trillion won, which would be around 250 billion USD, I believe. This is all to try to alleviate, to mitigate the impact of whatever decisions U.S. President Donald Trump comes up with in terms of trade policy. And it includes, for example, more insurance support, for example, in cases of extreme volatility in the foreign exchange markets. And we know that, of course, there will be such volatility happening probably because it does every time that President Trump says it's something unexpected. There's also going to be, for example, more government spending in terms of organizing trade fairs or sending foreign trade delegations overseas. But of course, it's natural to think that the government would put up a record budget for this if we think that what you just mentioned on Inauguration Day, President Trump already threatened to levy a 25% tax on its trading partners, big trading partners, Canada and Mexico, starting February 1st, if both countries do not cut the flow of illegal immigrants and drugs into the U.S. He's also talked about a possible tariff of up to 60% on China. And of course, already this scenario poses a great problem for Korean companies because many big Korean companies have manufacturing facilities in countries like China and Mexico. We're talking automotive companies, we're talking semiconductor, battery manufacturers, those companies that are already facing uncertainty in the U.S. because they invested heavily, and now President Trump is talking of reviewing what he calls unfair subsidy policies from his government. On top of that, of course, there's the possibility that President Trump decides to go on an all-open trade war with China, which would hurt the Korean economy enormously, because these countries are basically its two largest trading partners. And there's always a possibility of President Trump coming up with an exclusive tariff to be applied only on Korean goods and services, because we know that he's said it every now and then that he considers Korea to be one of those countries that take advantage of the U.S. So looking at all this, all these possible scenarios, it's only natural to think that the government would rally as much support as it can for the exports industry, which accounts for around 40% of Korean GDP.
Right. Keeping in mind what Andres has just said, Professor Song, then what Korean sectors do you believe will be negatively affected by new U.S. trade policies, and which ones are likely to perhaps be positively affected by Trump's new trade policies?
At least there is no positive effect because of the tariff. It always causes the price of the export is increased. But because of the depreciation of Korean won against the US dollar, actually that effect, the tariff effect, 25%, for example, effect will be reduced by as much as 15% because 10% depreciation already occurred in the last year. So clearly the Korean economy has been dependent upon the international trade and export to the United States. So in the United States, it has been the trade surplus has been $55.7 billion in trade in terms of the US dollars, and it is up in 25.4% from 2023 and 2024. But the reason is because the U.S. economy is very strong and robust, therefore their power, and they would like to import more goods from all abroad. Actually, that is very greatly helpful for the U.S. economy to experience the declining inflation. But however, at least Andres has already pointed out that the diverse negative impact on the semiconductor and the rechargeable battery is really serious, is because of the already several multinational enterprise has promised to build a factory in the United States to avoid the tariff. But as long as they make use of some parts produced in China and other countries, they are still subject to the tariff, and also they could be, the direct threat is the removal of the subsidy. So that is a really serious threat. At least some neutral, or at least some industries could have a room for improvement and to avoid the negative effect, and the mitigate effect is such as some kind of nuclear energy or defense on some energy, oils or natural gases. But still, it is very difficult to overcome when tariff is imposed. So then one way to overcome is diversify away the export route, not just on the United States. Clearly, U.S. market is the biggest and very attractive market, but still we should make effort to diversify away the export to other regions.
Right, and before we delve deeper into that, Professor Song, Mr. Trump has spoken of how tariffs will serve to lower U.S. trade deficits with its trading partners like South Korea, which last year, if I'm not mistaken, recorded a surplus of $55.7 billion with the U.S. Now, some pundits have cast doubt on the connection between tariffs and deficits. What are your thoughts?
Actually, this is the basic economic concept, and trade the deficit is not at all related with the tariff at all, because the balance of payment is always zero theoretically, economically, and because of the balance of trade plus net inflow of capital. For example, if United States import mold goods, that is real goods. In return, they just deliver the US dollar, the paper currency. That is actually, in terms of a real good, it is just a paper. So then, for example, Chinese companies who receive the US dollars, they cannot use US dollar in their consumption or investment in China at all. Therefore, they need to save or deposit in some bank, more Chinese renminbi bank, whatever bank. And those banks also, they have to purchase or they must make a deposit. US dollar denominated currency should be deposited in the US bank again. Therefore, then, rather than just a deposit, they need to purchase the US Treasury bond, which promises the higher yield or rate of interest rate. So actually, that is effectively, that is to subsidize the US economy because the US consumers, they could enjoy the real good with a cheaper price, but the exporting countries' consumers, all they receive is just the paper currency, which cannot be used for the purchase in their domestic market. So this is very, it sounds very paradoxically, but actually this is the way how economy is working and trade is working. So actually there is no relationship at all. However, politically, that this is a symbolic gesture and that has been a very strong say and appealing to the US voters, then Trump, anyway, he should do and then claim that there is a relationship because of the trade deficit and the tariff. And actually, we are going to wait and see and how it will play out, because clearly, from my perspective, the other renowned economists predict that this will backfire Trump policy about tariff. Therefore, they expect some kind of negotiation under the table.
Right, I see. Some kind of negotiations going forward then. Yeah. Meanwhile, Andres, Bloomberg claims that South Korea may consider more U.S. food imports to appease the Trump administration. Do tell us more.
Well, that is a possible contingency that is being contemplated, but yet again, a very sensitive one also, because we do know how this could affect the farming sector in Korea, and we do know how vocal the farmers in Korea can be. We might, some episodes in the past come to mind. For example, I remember when in 2011, Korea and the U.S. were negotiating the signing of the FTA, and a lawmaker actually detonated a tear gas on the floor of the National Assembly to try to block the approval of the FTA that, among many other thorny issues included the imports of U.S. beef, I remember, which were, of course, supposed to hurt the local producers of Hanwoo, of Korean beef, here in Korea. So, again, a very sensitive issue. I think Seoul is now trying to look into other areas to increase its imports on, at least on a first step. That would be probably oil or gas, for example. And again, we have to think that, unfortunately, the Korean government is right now on an interim position to add to the complexity of the issue, because of the political turmoil that has been going on since President Yoon decided to declare martial law in December.
Right. Professor Song, as Andres has just mentioned, other foreign media claim that Korea may look into boosting energy imports from the U.S. to further appease Mr. Trump, especially keeping in mind his slogan on the day of inauguration. We spoke about, and I quote, drill, baby, drill. What are your thoughts regarding this import plan?
But actually, I doubt whether actually the purchase more U.S. products, such as Andres mentioned, that U.S. meat or beef or the agricultural products, because in terms of the dollar amount, it is very small. Also, considering possibility is to purchase the energy products such as oil or natural gases from the United States. That is another option, but that does not necessarily placate Trump, because Trump's idea about the tariff imposing tariff is all around the world. Actually, not just China, not just the selective countries, including the most closest allies such as Mexico and Canada, even 25%. Then what about these products from Europe? So considering that, it doesn't help much. But however, what can we do is to mitigate just a direct threat or some problems caused for the multinational enterprise in Hyundai or Kia or Samsung or SK Hynix, whatever, the biggest horses of Korean economy anyway. So in order to facilitate or to smooth the potential difficulties, that is, as a gesture, I think that would be some positive effect on the negotiation. But considering our economy's growth prospect, because in last year's third quarter is 0.1% GDP growth, and fourth quarter is 0.2%. And recently, Bank of Korea has reduced the forecast of this 2025 GDP growth rate as low as 1.6%. So this tells us that we need to think very differently, not just hanging on the exporting or some Trump. Just the Trump tariff is given as constraint. Then, as I mentioned earlier, one way to overcome is look the other direction. So not just hanging on the U.S. is not anymore a viable strategy to reinvigorate the Korean economy anymore. So at least to make this smoothly, the relationship between the U.S. and no further claim by U.S. Trump administration, considering import such energy products, but actually that is sacrificing Korean consumers, because that oil price will be very high, considering the cut rate of Russian oil is almost nothing in comparison to other imported oils. So that means actually we, at the sacrifice of Korean consumers, purchase high price, pay for their oil and the energy price, and then to make the big companies to have a smooth trade relationship with the U.S. So we need to think about it again.
Right, I see. Yeah. Andres, as Professor Song mentioned, Trump tariffs are targeting most of its global partners, all of its trading partners. That being said, do you suppose that trade talks between the EU and Mexico were revived because of the threat of Trump tariffs?
Well, I do think that indeed. I mean, both Mexico and the EU, just like many other trading partners of the U.S., have been bracing for the impact of his policy decisions regarding trade. And last Friday, negotiations right ahead of Trump's inaugurations, negotiations between Mexico and Brussels were concluded to upgrade the FTA between the two sides. This new FTA is going to include now, for example, equal access for companies of both sides to public tenders, for example, but most importantly, agricultural products for the first time. Now, again, the exchange of goods and services between the EU and Mexico, I believe, is in the ballpark of around $100 billion a year, something like that, which is basically less than 10 times. I mean, it's less than a tenth of the exchange between the U.S. and the EU, which I believe is around 1.3 or 1.2 trillion USD a year. Again, I think that there is potential for growth there, and that this FTA intends to actually increase and improve those numbers. You know, I think the important thing here is, as Professor Song was pointing out, is how both the EU, Mexico, and other countries are just trying to look for alternative trading networks, supply chains, etc. Now that Donald Trump has become the president, for example, the EU actually just signed its first FTA very, very recently, ahead of Trump's inauguration, with Mercosur, which is the economic and trade bloc of Latin American countries formed by Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, and Bolivia. So as you pointed out, everybody's trying to find alternatives to the current situation.
Right, and that being said then, Professor Song, even before Mr. Trump returned to the White House, you've frequently highlighted on Arirang News the importance for Korea to diversify its export markets. Keeping that in mind, do you suppose Korea is doing enough to diversify its own export markets?
Oh, absolutely no, never. At least not under. They did nothing under the Yoon's regime. As Andres pointed out, there is some. This is a very dilemma situation for some countries, because they would like to make some negotiation and get a favorable condition. But however, when they cooperate with each other and looking for other alternative system, that is another issue. So considering that in mind, I think the Trump's policy is a high tariff, and then still he wants to retain the U.S. dollar's hegemony over the all trade in the industry or world global trade. And also he would like to reduce the trade deficit. That is trilemma, which cannot be achieved. Cannot be achieved. Simultaneously, it cannot be achieved. Impossible. That is impossible trilemma. So, because even as long as to retain the U.S. dollar's dominancy, the appreciation of the U.S. dollar cannot be avoided. That implies that China may face the massive tariff, as Andres remarked, that 60%. But another way is some kind of the massive appreciation of renminbi, for example. That could make the U.S. exports be cheap enough for the Chinese consumers to purchase the U.S. product. That could help mitigate the U.S. deficit. But that is natural and that is economic way. But however, China will not accept it, because China is not anymore, it cannot be Japan. Under the 1985 Plaza Accord, Japan has been derailed permanently out of the industrial strength, and they lose the industrial prowess and the financial ascendancy in the world economy. So that means China will not accept such a Plaza Accord similar type of appreciation of the Chinese renminbi against the US dollar. That implies that China may rely on the BRICS and the plus some alternative system, not depending upon the US dollar. That is another, the way how this round of the conflict play out in the future.
I see. A very difficult issue then. All right, Professor Song, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Right, and Andres, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow, that is Thursday, with a look at the latest political events. Do join us then.